President Bola Tinubu has declared that his administration cannot be accused of protecting any individual or group from legal consequences on account of political affiliation or obstructing crime investigation and prosecution by the authorities, as the government has neither shielded laws nor engages in concealment of people's involvement in crime. The president spoke yesterday in Abuja while declaring open the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, and National Judicial Institute, NJI, workshop for justices and judges. He warned that the breakdown of any society began when those entrusted with interpreting its laws became compromised. State House correspondent Adesua Omoran reports.
At the opening of the joint workshop of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission and the National Judicial Institute in Abuja, President Tinubu, represented by Vice President Kashim Shettima, drew a sharp line between justice and compromise. He warns that the breakdown of any society begins when those interpreting its laws become compromised. Tinubu said his administration has not interfered in corruption cases and will not shield anyone, regardless of party or position.
No matter the partisan sentiments woven against us, there is no person or group who can accuse this administration of shielding political actors on account of their affiliation to this government or the political party. We have allowed both the judiciary and the anti-graft agencies to exercise their constitutional and statutory powers to dispense justice and restore sanity. The evidence is before your eyes. We cannot claim to have excelled in our pursuit of a transparent system if we do not lead by such examples.
He also notes that his administration has reviewed judges' salaries and working conditions to promote independence of the judiciary. The workshop comes amid growing public concern that corruption trials, particularly cases involving government officials, among them 2 former humanitarian ministers, have stalled or dragged on for years. Analysts say the slow pace of such high-profile cases raises doubts about the consistency of Nigeria's anti-graft efforts, even as new convictions are secured. But the EFCC chairman, Ola Olukayode, says the agency has secured over 7,000 convictions under the Tinubu administration and recovered more than 500 billion naira in 2 years, crediting the results to a more responsive judiciary. He acknowledges, however, that prosecuting high-profile corruption cases remain difficult.
We appear to have grown accustomed to a predictable pattern in high-profile prosecutions. When investigations are concluded, getting politically exposed persons to appear in court to answer to charges is an Herculean task itself. When that ordeal is overcome and the charge is read, other antics follow. It is either the charges are not properly served or the defendants who hitherto was filled as fiddle suddenly comes down with some strange and most chronic ailments under the sun.
Chief Justice of Nigeria, Kudirat Kekereekun, reminds judges that justice must never be delayed or selective.
The judiciary remains the last line of defense against impunity. The fight against economic and financial crimes cannot succeed if the judiciary falters.
And from the legislature, President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, represented by Chief Whip Mohammed Mungunu, pledges continued legislative support for Nigeria's anti-corruption drive.
The war against corruption demands a trinity of virtue: an independent judiciary, a disciplined enforcement community, and a vigilant citizenry. Where these 3 stand united, no portraits of corruption can stand.
With the executive, legislature, and judiciary renewing vows to fight corruption, the challenge now remains in turning strong words into consistent action and improving that justice indeed serves all. Adesua Omoran, Arise News.
Thank you, Adesua Moran. Well, exactly 5 years after the NSAS protests, security forces in Abuja on Monday clamped down on protesters demanding the release of Nnamdi Kanu, the detained leader of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB. Arise News chief correspondent Ferdinand Doroha was on ground covering the protest.
A few minutes past 7 a.m., and protesters led by activist Omoyele Sowore and the legal team of detained leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB Nnamdi Kanu, are gathering at the Maitama Junction. The group had earlier put out a notice calling on Nigerians to hit the streets in demand for the release of Nnamdi Kanu. Minutes later, security operatives comprising police and military officers stormed the venue, firing shots and tear gas at the protesters. The protesters regrouped around Beggar Roundabout, from where they peacefully marched to Taku.
What do we want? Free Nnamdi Kanu! What do we want? Free Nnamdi Kanu!
Convener Omoyele Sowore calls for a minute silence in honor of those who were killed during the #EndSARS protest exactly 5 years ago.
May their souls continue to pursue their oppressors. Amen! Amen! He said amen!
He then speaks on the reason for today's gathering.
We are not here as Igbos or Yorubas or Hausas. Yes. In fact, if you look around very well, there are a lot of Igbos, there are a lot of Hausas and Yorubas. Yes. All united to ensure that our brother is brought back home. That they should end the sham trial that is going on at the Federal High Court.
So what we are saying is that this country, there should be justice for all Nigerians. There should be equal justice. You can see we are here addressing the press, exercising our right to freedom of expression, and you can see what the police, what they are doing, the way they are intimidating us as citizens of this country.
While the group was still addressing the media, security operatives again attacked, firing gunshots and tear gas.
Hey, country, do you see me carry arms? Do you see me carry arms? Do you see me carry arms?
Several persons were arrested, including lawyer to Nnamdi Kanu, Aloy Ejimako, Nnamdi Kanu's brother, and some journalists. Some of the protesters speak on the clampdown by the government.
I carry placard of Tinubu under the Nadekus in Tojoso Market. The rally was organized by Ganifa Yomi, Bekesa Sonkuti, and also Wale Soyonka and Frederick Fashion. The rally, Tinubu did not attend the rally. Before he came, arrest was made under Ganifa Yomi. Gani was holding a toothpick. He said even if Nigeria will die for this country to be good, for military to submit power to the democracy, say he will do it. He went to prison for it. Beko went to it. And the Tinubu did not have. Before he came, arrest was done. We all run away. I carry the placard to support the Nadeko for freedom of movement.
Around the Federal Capital Territory, security operatives mounted roadblocks, making it difficult for workers to get to their places of work. Justice Mohammed Umar had, in honor of an application by the police, restrained Sowore and others from protesting in some sensitive areas in Abuja, including the Aso Rock Villa, National Assembly Complex, Force Headquarters, the Court of Appeal, Eagle Square, and Shehu Shagari Way. But while the protesters had obeyed the instructions, security operatives clamped down on any gatherings by perceived protesters in the Federal Capital Territory.
Now, 5 years after the EndSARS protest, the security operatives on a Monday morning, the 20th of October 2025, intimidated and harassed protesters and journalists coming out for the commemoration of the EndSARS protest, and also protesters asking for the release of Nnamdi Kanu from Utaku, the Federal Capital Territory. Ferdinand Duroha, Arise News.
Thank you, Ferdinand. Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu on Friday launched Omieko, a major water transportation initiative aimed at transforming mobility across the state. The project, backed by the French government, the European Union, and private investors, according to Governor Sanwo-Olu, reflects Lagos's commitment to innovation and partnership. Arise News correspondent Edim Blessing filed in this report.
The official launch of the Omieko project, a 410 million euros initiative aimed at transforming the Lagos inland waterways into a world-class transportation system. Unveiled at the 5 Cowries terminal in Ikoyi, the initiative is a major and bold step in Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu's plan to improve mobility, ease traffic congestion, and promote sustainable transport across Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital.
And so today, we launched the Omi Eco project, which means water of Lagos, because Eco is Lagos and Omi is water. We choose to create history anew. This is not just a project unveiling, it is a bold statement that Lagos will lead Africa in building a sustainable, connected, forward-thinking water transportation ecosystem. From the congested road to Blue Highway, every Lagosian knows the frustration of traffic, and you saw some on the screen right now, a couple of minutes ago. However, fewer members remember that Lagos began as a network of islands. It was knitted together by water.
We've deployed first and last mile buses to serve inner communities, ensuring connectivity from the neighborhood to major transport hubs. We have also commenced the construction of 2 major public transportation interchanges at Marina and Mile 2. Strengthening the Traffic Management Authority, LASMA, and vehicle inspection services to enhance safety, compliance, and efficiency on our roads.
In the words of the governor, Omi Eco, supported by the French government, European Union, and private investors, reflects Lagos' commitment to innovation and partnership. With Omi Eco, 15 ferry routes will be developed and supported by the deployment of 75 large-capacity electric ferries and the construction of 25 modern terminals. 25 million passengers will be moved annually. Travel time will be reduced as well as pressure on Lagos roads.
So what exactly is the Omi Eco project? We're going to be seeing the influx of over 70 hybrid electric ferries to reduce emissions and boost clean mobility. We're going to be upgrading 20 jetties and terminals. We're going to be dredging and channelizing 15 routes for safer and faster transport. Capacity development for all stakeholders. And crucially, we're going to be funding the informal sector under the Vessel Industry Transition Program. This is how we build a water-based economy that works for all, from operators to passengers, from private investors to the citizens. Water transport will not compete with road or rail. It will complement road, it will complement rail, and ensure that we have an integrated transportation system.
The work for intermodal transportation in Lagos, linking the roads to the rail and to the waterways continues. But I am confident that it will be done because I see that it is in very, very good hands and the baton is passing down slowly to the younger ones who have the clear energy to run the race.
The Omi Eco project is a clear demonstration of the federal and state authorities' commitment to enhance the quality of life of people in Lagos through a more sustainable development model. The sizable support which we are bringing to this project, 300 million euros in subsidized loans, some 540 billion nairas, and 60 million euros in grants, equivalent to approximately 110 billion nairas.
The project, running from 2024 to 2030, is part of the Lagos State Transport Master Plan, which aims to build a fully integrated transport network across road, rail, and the waterways.
Congratulations, Lagos State and the Omi Eco project. Really excited to see that. Recall that the governor's themes agenda starts with T, traffic management and transportation. And I believe that Governor Sanwo-Olu is definitely making transportation one of his legacies in Lagos State. But beyond that, ironic, Vimbai and Rufai, that the first two stories, one talks about judicial reform and justice system in Nigeria, and the second is contesting the justice system in terms of the free Nnamdi Kanu protest across in Abuja and in Lagos primarily. Your take on these stories this morning?
All right, well, very quickly on Lagos State, congratulations to Lagos State. I just hope that in future we'll be able to harness the power of African capital to drive more of our developmental and infrastructure infrastructural project. So just a note to the future, you know, that I hope that all efforts that are being made to ensure that African capital can be invested to drive African development, I hope more steps can be taken towards that. Of course, that's a collective effort. Congratulations, nevertheless. Now, let's go to commentary around the judiciary and the successes of EFCC in the past 2 years. The first question that comes to mind is, what is the deterrence to corruption? That's the first question we ask ourselves, especially because it's just been barely a week since we discussed the presidential pardons and clemency, and the conversation around that was, well, if this is how we're going to handle the process of pardoning convicts and granting clemency, then what is the deterrent to committing crimes? If we look at the example of corruption as is led by EFCC, unfortunately, the culture and the pattern we see is not one that started today. It did not start 2 years ago. It dates back. When you look at a report regarding the EFCC in 2017, at that time, the report had stated that in 17 years, EFCC had only secured 10 high-profile convictions. I'm glad that in this particular outing, the presidency did make reference to the fact that the public feels that there's a lopsided pattern when it comes to convicting high-profile cases versus cybercrime cases. And we need to see more of a political will towards it, because as much as the government might say that they're not shielding anybody, the narrative around it paints a different picture. The narrative around it sees important and high-profile people, some of which are alleged to have said to have jumped political allegiances just so they can get the cover of protection that one receives when they're with the ruling party. All of these allegations that continue to float around public space can only be dispelled by us seeing very quick and efficient convictions. Whether it be guilty, whether it be not guilty, these cases need to be expedited. And by now, if we compare to reports from 2017, and now almost 10 years later, we would have thought that those kinks that hinder the fast tracking of these cases would have been ironed out. If you remember 2018, 2019, we saw convictions of former governors. We saw convictions of high-profile cases. Where are those convictions today? That's what we want to see. So as much as we applaud some victories in other areas, we want to see those convictions. Now to the area of the judiciary. The theme of separation of powers has been a consistent theme that we've seen over the past 2 years. And there have been several high-profile cases as well that have been exemplary to this. If we look at the case of Senator Natasha Edwara, in essence, that was about separation of powers. How much can the judiciary get involved in what happens in the floor of the National Assembly? There was the River State case. Beyond the Supreme Court, there were the other 40 cases that were instituted challenging the case, the declaration of a state of emergency in River State. But did we see a transparent, effective, efficient judicial process? No, we did not. So I think that the judiciary still has a long way to go. We continue to hear about reform. The administration also say they've tried to give reprieve in the form of to ensure that the judicial officers, receive the necessary benefits and they're compensated commensurately for their work. However, there's still a lot of work to do. I have to applaud them for a few cases of suspensions of justices. If you remember, there was Justice Inyang who was suspended because the justice had made a ruling in a case that had not even been heard. But we want to see more of that. We're not saying that they're all corrupt, but we want to say that the accountability needs to continue to flow around various judges so that we can also have confidence that those bad eggs within the system are also being dealt with accordingly. Now let's move over to a day of protest yesterday that saw the FCT being shut down. Reports say that the Southeast was also largely shut down. It was a quiet day, not necessarily protest, but more of a quiet day in the Southeast. Now we ask ourselves, where are we going? We continue to speak about the heavy-handedness of our police forces. And the irony is that this marks 5 years of another mega protest that had challenged the heavy-handedness of the armed forces, of the police forces. Yet here we are. Now we understand that in a protest, the police has limits that they're supposed to follow, just the same way that protesters have limits that they're supposed to follow. Now we saw protesters encroaching in the area that had been ruled by the court to have been off limits with regards to the protest. Was the best way to reinforce the fact that those areas were off limits, was the best way to fire bullets and to spray tear gas in the nation's capital? We ask ourselves, the rules of engagement, what governs them? When you're dealing with protesters who are unarmed, we watched it. They were unarmed. And they're now having to run for their lives, even though they're engaging in a peaceful protest. And I know the police have spoken and they've said that, well, they were encroaching in an area that was off limits. But we now say that, was that the correct use of force in that instance? Other instances here in Lagos State, we saw Yemi Ademolakum laying flowers at the toll gate. We ask ourselves, what are the laws around memorializing places? Yes, Lagos State does have the Lagos State traffic law of 2018, I believe, and there's the sanitation laws as well, which say that in some instances you can be stopped from, wanting to lay something in a busy road. But again, how was it handled? If there was an instruction that it was illegal for memorials, any memorial flowers to be laid at that location on that day, why could it not have been handled in a more civil way? These are the issues, in my opinion.
These are the issues. Thank you so much, Vimba. Rufai, your take on these stories.
Okay, you see, you know what heralds Nigeria's judiciary as we speak today, and the political process as regards prosecution of people that have done political offenses in this country. The words of a famous politician, which anyway he has come back to say he was quoted out of context.
Infamous.
That once you join a certain political party, your sins are forgiven. So see, we can have judiciary conferences from here to Kutuwenji, as far as I'm concerned. The people know that there's no fairness and sincerity. All of a sudden, once EFCC threatens some people, the next thing, they join a certain political party, we don't hear EFCC again. Or they go and beg, we don't hear EFCC again. We've talked about the humanitarian minister, we've talked about the case in Rivers State, declaration of state of emergency, that the Supreme Court did not hear. But the same Supreme Court was so quick to hear a local government matter that involved some people just last year.
End of last year. In about 1 or 2 months, they quickly heard that case. But how do you want the judiciary to perform properly when people are building houses for judges in this country and we are seeing it? Governors are giving largesse and cars to judges. Until we have a way to do it, that politicians don't have to hand these things over to judges, we can never have a fair judiciary. Ayo, is it not in this country we all lived in 2019 because of a wrangling as regards a Senate presidency race? The case of Goje, a nolle prosequi, was declared. And the governor was let go so that the race was going to favor some people in the Senate. There were articles written about that in this day as regards Goje and nolle prosequi. So we use justice to do political baiting and political negotiations in this country. And justice is only served. The people that truly go to jail in this country are those that don't know people at the top. Once you know people at the top, your sins are forgiven. We can go on a long litany of these issues, and we know nothing will happen. Is it not in this country that even the EFCC chief himself said concerning a governor, if we don't prosecute him, I will resign. We are waiting for the prosecution. The case is in court. But you can see that activity is not activity in again. So we know these people. What kind of democracy are we practicing? It's not a joke. Should we now talk about the pardon that people have eviscerated and said is a class act in shambolic dispensation of reasoning? And afterwards, the Attorney General of the Federation, my dear Egbon, they tried to
tell us what we don't know by saying that they're still going to put it up for review. Nobody, the Attorney General has no right for any review of a pardon. That has gone. That is just set to placate Nigerians that are suffering. So what judiciary do we have? And all of us are guilty in all of this. That's why when Fela sang many years ago that that Archbishop na miliki, Pope na enjoyment, Imam na gbalado, even the religious bodies share in this, even the civil society share in this.
Don't speak ill of the
I'm sorry, Ayo. Is it not where we were sitting when civil society were defending a governor with corruption charges? Wasn't the media even part of it? Is it not under Fela that a judge confessed that he was pressured? That he did nothing wrong? Is it not under, during Fela's case, that a judge confirmed that he was pressured? So what country do we live in? We live in a joke. And that's why they will stifle voices. The same people that was easy for them to protest against Jonathan, protest against the military, they will stifle the voice of protest. That's why ordinary flour is not scaring them. You carried flour to honor people. Some people were pushing the flour away. It speaks volumes of the democracy we practice. That's why till today, a protest happened. Mr. Bayo Ononugwa was saying that a lawyer does not have the right, that the NBA should look at it. It's in a case in court. But when the likes of them, Ganifa Wemi, were on the streets, you supported them. So the question we ask is, what changed? What democracy are we running? What democracy are we running? If it favors us, we scream. People are talking about Nnamdi Kanu, not because I support everything he did, but we are calling for fairness because in the same country, we are so seeing how he's so quick to pardon bandits and criminals. In fact, they even saw a B for them under something called Operation Suluhu, where they say they want to rehabilitate them. Aren't we seeing it in this country? Is it not same in this country? And people are saying that we are misplaced when we are talking about. I'm not just talking about Nnamdi Kanu. The Court of Appeal had ruled. In fact, in the case they took to the Supreme Court, it was 4-1. There was one dissenting. Ogunwumiju dissented. That leave this man and let him be. So I'm not just talking. But is it not in the same country that we are pardoning bandits? Jailbreak is happening. Prisoners are leaving. Nothing is being done to them. Is it not in the same country people are taking photo-ops with bandits? Are they not meeting communities? Why do we like to deceive? You see, the reason why Nigeria has never moved forward is because we thrive on deceit. It's a country of deceit. Leaders will deceive us. The people will deceive each other. The little data boys will deceive themselves. When people are taking their future away from them, they are still tweeting in support of the people. So what society, what country can we build this way? It's hypocrisy. And that's why we continue to keep talking here. We will say our own to them, like they listen, they don't listen. As regards Omieko, I'm happy, congratulations. But Vimbai threw a very strong bomb. And let me, I will say it fully. As long as you are collecting money from France to do Omieko, hope you know you are losing your sovereignty. Because that's when people will now come and say, hey, America cannot talk to us this way. Our sovereignty is key. Our this is key. Like Vimbai said, she said it in Queen's English. Me, I will speak it like a Yoruba man that I am. I foresee a day, we should look forward to a day where Africa capitalism
I was going to say, but
will grow Africa.
That.
That's what we should do.
Africapitalism. That is what Tony Elumelu is championing, and I do believe that we will come to a time where African CEOs, businessmen would actually be the solution or provide solution for infrastructural development in Africa. And that's why, Tony Elumelu, Ms. TOE, cannot stop on this is advocacy and campaign for that. I do say, though, at the moment, we do, it's a welcome development here in Lagos State. I cited earlier on that the governor had, as part of his Themes Plus agenda, and in the area where it has failed, I have also come out to talk about it, that recall that this is what you have said you're going to do for Lagosians, in the second term. And so it's good to see this development. One of the legacies I would say of this administration would be in transportation infrastructure. He's talked about, he's done rail, and now we're moving to transportation, and how amazing would it be for Lagosians if, we can reduce traffic in this city, in this hub, by actually diversifying transportation in the state. A few things to note, and, as already been mentioned, I heard the French partner talk about a subsidized loan for Lagosians. Can we pay back? Can Lagos pay back? I don't think it's in doubt at all. But I think
we'll pay back.
Yeah, I think it's not in doubt at all that Lagos can pay back. They've shown over the years in terms of IGR, in terms of, how vibrant and how accountable they are, that it is possible for them to pay back, especially if it is managed properly. Again, recall that this will not kick in until 2 years. It's in phases over the next 6 years, but the first 2 years, we should see the first tranche completed, and then we'll continue to monitor and see how well it would be. A number of things have been talked about. Security for water transportation, infrastructure development, skills transfer, ensuring that some of these boats can be manufactured here in Lagos, creation of jobs for Lagosians. So I believe that this also should be a prototype, especially for coastal areas, in Nigeria, states that are on coastal borders. It's important for them to also take a leaf from this and actually begin to look at how we can modernize our state. We cannot continue to talk about the center of excellence, the capital city of Nigeria, the commercial city of Nigeria, and not talk about infrastructural development. So on this one, definitely a pass mark for the Lagos state government and the implementing agency, LASWA, who are doing this, absolutely. Now, let me move on to the stories from yesterday in terms of the protests in Abuja, in Lagos. Berger, Maxwell Okpara was there, and he made some very salient points when spoken to. Number one was that the police have said that there was a court order stopping the protest. Well, what they said, or the protesters have said, that they did not see any court order, number one. Number two is that the restrictions as to where they could protest was limited to the National Assembly and Asovila. And so the areas that was in contention, where they gathered, had nothing to do with the court order. And then it would be important for us to actually see the court order that was gotten from the police and from the court. Also, I think it's important to talk about the selective obedience of court orders, because it's the same court order that we have championed about how Nnamdi Kanu, by a number of times, court orders even up to the tune of awarding him 1 billion naira in damages to against the Nigerian federal government, hasn't been obeyed. So why is it selective justice, selective choice of when to obey court order or when not to obey court order that is a plague of the Nigerian system? And so that's another issue he brought up, but that was very important. Something else that we must also highlight is the protocol for security agencies to manage protests and protesters in Nigeria. We've talked about what happened yesterday, where tear gas was used on protesters as early as 7 a.m. Unarmed protesters, I must mention, where live bullets were shot at, whether in the air or anywhere, at protesters. What is this thing about dissenting voices and silencing dissenting voices under this administration? I say this because whether it be via protest or via even political parties, it is the silencing of any voice that opposes or dissents or is dissenting to the main party or to the government in power, and that does not augur well for democracy. We cannot have a democracy where it is only sycophancy that is the order of the day, and sycophants are the ones who have the ears of government. It does not augur well for democracy, and no administration can thrive on that. The successes you record will only last for a moment, but the results will not show, and that's why we keep talking about the government of propaganda, where we are making announcements that seem positive but has no effect or obvious effect on the lives of the people. And so back to what happened yesterday at Lagos Tollgate with Madam Olekun, and talking about this resistance to opposition voices, or this resistance for citizens to exercise their right, whether it be to free association, movement, or just expressing an emotional moment based on what happened 5 years ago. And so she went to the tollgate, and according to her report, and I believe Adefemi is going to be taking this on world, maybe I'll take over that in more detail. There she was accosted by a man o' war. Because they were not armed, she was able to resist and talk back. But she said that at this point, 5 armed policemen then approached them, was not captured on camera, approached them and were asking them to leave the place. What crime or offense did they commit by going to put wreaths or flowers as a memorial at the Lagos Tollgate? They were not obstructing traffic, they were not littering the streets, they were just going to place flowers on the tollgate. Why this excessive show of force under this administration? This cannot be the legacy of a man who touts himself as a Democrat. It cannot be. And going back to judicial reform, when we talk about protection of political actors, we bring up the case of Yahaya Bello. We bring up the case of a former APC chairman whose case has not yet been fully solved despite video evidence to the contrary. I mean, a number of people heard about this story. So there are very low-hanging fruits if President Tinubu wants to demonstrate to Nigerians that he respects judiciary. And finally, one thing that was not said was judicial reform. If we want a truly independent judiciary, then money cannot come from the executive. They cannot have that much influence. He talks about better welfare for the judiciary. But as you mentioned, Rufai, in some cases, these houses and welfare that's done for the judiciary is part of making them, softer to the needs of the executive. And in some way, it's actually influencing the judiciary in a way that they would not be independent in discharging their duties. I say a lot of things to talk about, but we are not yet there. Corruption, Nigeria can be corrupt-free, absolutely, but there must be the political will and the demonstration through policies that demonstrates that Nigeria should and can be corruption-free.